themselves as superior to. And if you give an example, of course, it is easy for one to think, oh, probably people with political power exercise or see leadership as dictatorship, as authoritarian. But it is in our DNA. We are all wired to see leadership or an opportunity, an edge over another as a means to abuse their rights. So,
Okay.
governance in Nigeria over the years have been seen as power to uh, whimsically and capriciously dominate. Henceforth, anyone that comes to see me, you must ask for their name, ask for their identification, and let them know, ask them if they have an appointment before you bring them to me.
Hmm. Okay.
That's instruction, as simple as it sounds, by the time it will be implemented, you will hear reports of your security man or your gate man stripping your visitors.
Okay.
And the same way, when you tell someone you are in charge of this and this and this, let's say an event, we like parties a lot in Nigeria. So let's say an event, you say, okay, you are in charge of food and drinks. You will see the way the power, the energy, the authoritarian, role will come into that person. That spirit consumes that person, and he feels the need to stroke some people before he can actually give them benefit of the role she was supposed to play. And the same thing, our politicians. They see power. They are not jostling for power because of service. They don't see power as responsibility. They don't see governance as responsibility generally. They see it as a means of controlling resources and showing the less privileged that they are the boss of them. In other words, while we're growing up from school, we're being taught that the essence of school is to, I say schooling meaning indoctrination, assembly line literacy program that lies to our youth that the moment they go to school, spend a few years, do their time, they'll come out with a cardboard that gives them the entitlement, that's the seal of entitlement to believe that they can have anything that they want, especially starting from a job. Even if they're not qualified for it, even if they're not prepared for it, even if they don't have a vision towards the company they want to work in, they believe they are owed salary by those people. And I can go on and on and on and on about what people see as leadership. But simply put, leadership is responsibility and governance. As far as I'm concerned, based on what I stand for, I believe that the value of our youth is far more than their deployment as stooges holding misspelled signs,
Mm.
during protests.
Yeah.
So it's more important to begin from where the simple aspect of understanding what power
Mm.
is, what leadership is, what governance is,
Mm.
and all this terms actually points to service
Yeah.
and not necessarily ruling over
Ruling.
another.
Okay, so now, do you think that Nigerian youths are prepared to take on leadership roles in governance?
Do I think Nigerian youth?
Yeah, what do you think about the current situation with Nigerian youths with regards to governance? Do you think the youths are prepared to take on leadership roles?
Well, we need to look at the Nigerian situation properly. Let us look at where it starts from,
Okay.
because it is a chicken and the egg kind of situation. Um, let's start from the challenges, which is easy. An 8-year-old can talk about the problems of Nigeria and get a certificate, a PhD in it, because we all know we can talk about it for the rest of our years. But let us understand and isolate the pathology of the problem of Nigeria, how it impacts the youth of Nigeria, rather than blaming or piling on the youth of Nigeria based on their outcome without looking at the process that brought them to where they are today.
Okay.
And let's start from the challenges. Governance in Nigeria has been characterized by issues such as corruption, poor leadership, and ineffective management of resources, which is what I mentioned earlier. And so the country faces challenges like political instability, high unemployment rates amongst youth, and a lack of transparency and accountability in public administration. So basically, leading to insecurity, exacerbated economic hardship, deficit in human capital development and infrastructural development. So if you look at the unemployment rate today, it stands at 4.3% in the second quarter of 2024, reversing the rising trend in the previous 3 quarters. So similarly, the underemployment rate fell from 10.6% in 2024, that's quarter one, to 9.2% in 2024, quarter two, as expected. And the unemployment rate was higher in urban centers than in rural settlements. And that's is another whole topic itself. We're talking about rural urban
Yeah.
issue. Now, unemployment is caused by lack of quality education system. I have mentioned earlier on that what we have today is not education. I belong to, like you do, several alumni association. And when you look at the kind of education that we have and what we have turned out to be today, you see the difference in what our children are coming out with. And it's no longer uh, uh, holistic. It's no longer people going into institutions to be empowered so that they can apply their education in their society and solve problems of society and make a name for themselves or put a dent on the body of knowledge. It is
Mm-hmm.
more like coming out to bag a degree. To bag something. So people go to school, they have their masters, they have their whatever, they have all the degrees in the world, they're still living in their parents' house because
Mm.
they cannot even find productivity and they're still poor. So this is what we're looking at. Now, these are the form work that our children, our young people, have been caved in or carved in or been formed with or created with.
Mm.
So they came into the world disappointed in a way that all the promises that they have been made to dream about, the utopian dream of Batariadun Kokoka. In other words, my shoes will sound a certain way when I'm educated. Yes, your shoe may sound a certain way, but you're going to be jobless. You're going to be homeless. You're going to be unfulfilled simply because you do not have you're not properly prepared for the future that you currently live in. When you
Mm.
look at the demographic of Nigeria itself, Nigeria has a significant youth demographic with over 80% to 60%, let's just say conservatively, 60% of its population under 25.
Mm.
And this presents both an opportunity and a challenge. Under normal circumstances, in countries that are industrialized, that have proper education, youthful a high youthful population shows the strength of that nation. But in a country where resources, both human and natural resources, are not well managed or understood, um, they will be undermanaged, underengaged, and with that, you're going to have a problem in your hand with that population. So the youth are seen as potential agents for change, but are often sidelined in actual governance and leadership roles. If you look
Mm.
at the educational skills I have mentioned before, there are
Yeah.
initiatives today like National Youth Service Corps, skill acquisitions and entrepreneurship development program, which aim to equip young graduates with necessary skills for leadership and entrepreneurship. But however, the effectiveness of these programs varies, with
Yeah.
criticisms regarding the lack of practical impact and follow through with this youth. So, generally,
Yeah.
our youth are underengaged. They
Okay.
have apathy running in their system. In other words, they are becoming nihilists. They are becoming
Okay.
despondent.
Okay.
In other words, they don't believe in anything. They are tired
Yeah.
of, they don't see any light at the end of the tunnel beyond the fear that there might be a train coming to crush them. So with
Okay.
that, they've been left vulnerable. They
Yeah.
don't have enough role models to follow. And they are now given to, when the mind lacks purpose, what it seeks is distractions and entertainment. And that's why you see our youth, you know, um, running into things that makes them excited and makes them want to forget about their sorrow,
Okay.
drown
Yeah.
their expectations, and then take on illicit activities.
Okay.
So,
So
as
yeah.
far as governance is concerned,
Yeah.
they don't see it as something that concerns them, something that involves them, something that they need to take ownership of. So
Mm.
they are totally expressing apathy towards election, towards participation in politics, and
Okay.
towards so
Yeah.
many things that has to do with governance.
All right. So is this a case of, you mentioned the youth's been sidelined. So is this a case of being sidelined or poorly oriented? Because some would say education begins at home. And I came across the saying that the homes make up society. And, the society, the homes make the children. And one way or the other, it's a vicious cycle. Whatever plays out at, oh no, it says broken homes make broken kids and broken kids make a broken society. and broken society will make a broken adult, or how is it put? But then it's saying that it's a vicious cycle. So I don't know if you buy into that line of thought. Would you tie this to, is it a societal issue, or is it the issue of poor orientation that begins at home? Or when you say day, is it the response, is it solely on the government that the youths are not perceiving governance as something that they should participate in?
The problem is multifaceted. You cannot point fingers at government alone because the government themselves are a product of society. And when you look at the most critical institution in any society, it's the family. It starts from home, how you raise your children. And today we have a serious and chronic problem with the failure of parenting, which begins with father absence. It may not be as precarious as it is in the United States of America, but it is there. Hardly will you find a home now where you have the father and the mother living together in harmony. Most of the children you see today are from broken homes. They're from homes where their father were absent, their mother was just trying to make ends meet, and then in some cases, this parent also that tends to look for easy way out to push their children into instant gratification, illicit acts that makes them want to be quickly or to want to access this being better than their neighbor quickly. In other words, parents want to vicariously live through their children's eyes. And these are not problems of today. These are problems that have been prevalent for ages. If you look at the Bible, in 2 Timothy 2:22 says, run away from the evil things that young people long for. Try hard to do what is right. Have faith, love, and peace. Do these things together with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. So, in other words, we're looking at association of our children. We're looking at the family units. We're looking at role models. We're looking at their association. And today, you find that most governments, because of politics, because of the exploitation of the vulnerabilities of our youth, they started subsidizing irresponsibility while expecting that our youth to become responsible.
Yeah. All right. So let me just, before we move on, you said broken homes. Is it a case of broken homes or poor parenting? Because I don't think they are the same thing. When you say broken homes, what's it called? It could be that because we've had children come out. That's not, being defensible and saying that we've had the likes of Barack Obama. Is that an excuse to actually say, oh, the youth is not getting it right? Or is a case of the parents not doing what they ought to do, broken or being together? Because we're looking at the challenges now as regards orientation of the youths from homes.
Yeah, there are several challenges on the government side. There's also on the parental side. And when I say the parental side, their parents are failing, whether the home is broken or not. And broken home makes it worse. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
It's not just about broken homes, and it's not an excuse. There are people whose parents are not there together. They may not be divorced, but they're not together, and yet children turn out good. So it's a function of society. They say geography is destiny. There are certain areas you find yourself living in may make it very difficult because of the things you wake up to see every day for you to think beyond the limitation of your exposure. And today, thankfully, most of our youth are using phones. But what exactly are they gravitating towards? They are not gravitating towards things that can break their shackles and expose them to things that can make them the masters of their environment. But they're gravitating towards things that will make them witness continuously the existential vacuum that constantly makes them bored, makes them continue to reinforce apathy, make them face despair, make them lose a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. And once purpose is out of the window, what happens? You begin to think of self-destruction. You begin to look for a way of escape. And this is why you see most of our youth glorifying prostitution in the name of hookup. In most of our youth glorifying instant gratification by thinking that duping other people is a means to an end, and it's not. There's nothing wrong in it, And you find most of our streets today, if you go to most estates, majority of their houses are occupied by children or young people who have no jobs, no known jobs, and who are doing all sort of illicit things. Just yesterday, there was a bust, in Victoria Island, for goodness sake, with hundreds of youth in there with foreigners.
All right, but where does education come in? Because some would say it isn't entirely about the fact that the youths are not productive, or some are saying it's being unemployable, given that the schools are currently not producing quality graduates. So where do you think the role of education comes in? How do you think the government has failed in that area and setting reforms? Or if you think the government has gotten it right in that area, then, and even the private sector. Anyway, just make of it what you will. The role of education in, building the youths for leadership.
Well, what I'm going to say, really, rather than catastrophizing, is to look at the challenges from different perspective. Number one, on the government side, we know we have institutional weaknesses and corruption, and which has eaten deep into the marrow of the bones and the marrow of our institutions. And with that, that's one of the reasons why some of us are focused on institutional reforms holistically.
Mm.
We have poor policy implementation, and continuity. Most of the time, when you hear about the policy, we will dance because we know how to write these things well. When implementation comes, it will favor a few and then neglect the majority. Also, limited transparency and accountability, security challenges affecting effective governance, and infrastructural deficit generally. But when you look at the side of the youth itself, how are they prepared? Look, this we have already mentioned their strength from growing
Yeah,
youth political awareness and engagement. They now have more opportunity. They're now
yeah,
interested somewhat in who governs them and how those people govern, unlike before,
yeah. So
because of the reality
okay, let me
increasing.
rephrase. Let
Yeah.
me rephrase the question. Maybe I'm tying this to the reading culture, which we would agree is, a dying art. Like, now the thing is, you, for example, ask a graduate. Let's say, like you said at the opening, you talked about MSc holders not being able to defend their degrees. So, it's a case of how do you think we can get more, because without being able to develop the reading culture to know what's happening out there, without being able to put in the effort to learn more, and staying open-minded, and being able to defend your degree, I just know that this is a challenge with most organizations, where you can't even write an application letter. We see that happen with graduates a lot. So I'm asking that what would be the root cause of that, and how, just make of it what you will, because this is also a challenge when it comes to Nigerian youth.
Okay. Now, if you look at the rationale behind people going to school, most of them went to school because it is the next level. That's what everybody else is doing. All the neighbors' children are going to school. They don't know why they are doing it. They don't even know the purpose of life to start with. So if we don't address it from that point of the why, we'll continue to get it wrong, even if our children have PhDs. So it begins with the reorientation, both from government, both from parents, both from institutions, that our worth is not defined by what we achieve or acquire. It is a question of who we become and how we contribute to others. This self-esteem should come from character, not success or status. But in Nigeria, where people are fond of saying, "Do you know who I am?" where everybody wants to be flaunt dollars, flaunt cars, flaunt these, flaunt vanities, we are teaching the children that that is the meaning of success. That is the meaning of leadership. So with that, when they go into academics, when they go to school, no matter how well the school is being prepared, we see this same problem abroad too. People going to school and coming off worse with nose rings, piercings, and whatever it is all over their body, and they becoming problems of society. So our self-esteem, if we look at that from the perspective of strengthening the self-esteem of our children, and the letting them know that their highest accomplishment is to be a person of generosity, integrity, curiosity, humility, and wisdom. If this is done, you won't find people being focused on whatever titles that they have, being focused on where they schooled. When you hear people talk and they want to show you that they are educated, they will be mentioning their school, which shouldn't matter anyways. Nobody cares about the school that I went, but they only feel the impact of what I'm doing in society. And that's one of the reasons why you invited me to your program.
Yeah.
Not because you knew my school or you knew my alma mater or you saw my degrees or you saw how many degrees that I have. It's because of the impact in society. So if the hallmark of an open mind, is to refuse to let our ideas become our identity, you will find that there will be less problem in our society and our youth will embrace education and enlightenment better. Because the moment you say, I am a lawyer, I am a doctor, I am a this, I am a that, by the time they start asking you questions that burrows into the armor that you're wearing, your self-esteem is going to be eroded. For example, what happens if you say you're a lawyer and they disband you from law, practicing law? Does that stop you from existing? Does that stop you from exhibiting your virtues? So our youth needs to understand that it is only in toxic cultures that we need to arm ourselves with things that make us superior to other people. Under normal circumstances, the way we apply our education and show kindness to other people is what really matters. If you look at our in the olden days, our villages and all, people don't really necessarily have to become anything else other than be a good parent, other than being a good leader of their household, other than teaching their children, the young ones, to protect women and other children. The youth, the energy of the youth is used to protect the community. So that's application of education. So education doesn't really mean Ivy League or anything. It's a continuous exercise in exposing yourself to your environment and building bridges over gaps that you find in your environment. If our youth knows this, they will know what leadership is all about, and they will know how to solve our perennial leadership problem that has failed to identify resources and use it to the benefit of the collective.
Okay,
That
so
is my own that's
yeah,
my own purview of how we can solve this problem,
all
looking
right,
at it
yeah,
from a philosophical perspective.
yeah, we'll get to the solutions shortly. But then, if you can cite a real life situation now, given the reality we have in the country, what do you think the most significant challenge? What do you believe is the most significant challenge facing Nigerian youths in governance? I mean, in the wake of everything going on around, just talk about it in governance now.
It's the same thing. See, once there is a fault in society, governance is going to have problems. We live in an era of viral outrage and performative activism. In other words, anybody who belongs to a mob or a group that shouts the loudest are seen to be right. We have mistaken social media momentum for moral authority. In other words, if I have a lot of followers and likes and retweets and what have you, even if I'm lying, even if I'm playing the fool, I will be seen as a community builder. So these temporary storms that are manufactured by interest are giving our youth a misdirection about what leadership or relevance is in society. So within the youth themselves, rather than binding their forces together to work towards the understanding of their mileage in terms of their population. Look, they have 80% of the population. If they come together, there's no government, the 1% cannot enslave them. One of the mottos of our organization is to build a critical mass of transformational leaders who are youthful, responsible, difficult to rule, easy to govern, and impossible to enslave. But how
Okay.
do you achieve that in a society where everybody want to get rich quick?
Yeah.
Where everybody
O-
believes that when they wake up in the morning, the first thing they need to do is to tear each other down.
Okay.
Look
Let's
for whom to describe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
like fighting each other, right? So, but now, let's say for the well-meaning youths, like myself. First of all, what is the age range for youths now in the country? Because I hear 60-year-olds saying they are youths as well. So I need to be clear on that. What's your the range
the
of
concept of youthfulness
is
is
in the heart?
defined in our part of the world as upward mobility. In other words, if I'm 70 and I can still jump around and I have a social media account, I am a youth. So, and see, youth, adult, and all these things, anything you see, any form of stratification,
Okay.
whether you're looking at ethnicity, religion, or what have you,
Yeah.
is for political advantage in our climate. So it
Okay.
is not a proper delineation of, you know, there are many gray areas. That's all I'm saying. There
No,
are many gray
but don't you
areas.
think that that is part of the reason we don't have enough? That's what hampers youth participation in politics and governance. When, for example, a 60-year-old saying, "I am still a youth," and then you have mid 30s to early 40s or even 50s wanting to get into governance. Don't you think that's also a factor? But then I'm going to tie this other question in. For well-meaning Nigerians, that's for well-meaning youths. Okay, not just well-meaning, but the youths that embody the qualities that you've listed, you've talked about. what do you think hampers? What are the challenges you think they are faced with the current situation in the country as regards governance? Because there are some youths, even those in diaspora, those in the country, that really want to get into governance. But there are obvious challenges. So, what are some of the challenges you can identify as regards youth participation, given our reality now?
Yeah, I think basically it's about limited practical leadership training and opportunities. We don't have enough of that. Exclusion from key decision-making positions is also there. Financial barriers to political participation. How much can an average youth today buy the form of local government chairmanship? You can't, because the people who are within that,
We
they've
have a
made
call
it.
here. Hello, good morning.
Okay.
Apologies, Dr. Shagum. Good morning.
Maybe I'll get back to you.
Hello, good morning. All right, so please try to call back 0805 092 0927. All right, please go on.
So we have that barriers to political participation, financial barriers to political. They cannot afford the funds. They cannot compete because they don't have a war chest. Most of the politicians you see there, they take advantage of the system to build what they call a political war chest. That political war chest afford them the opportunity to pay their way through anything and perpetuate themselves in power. Our youth don't have that opportunity. There's also inadequate mentorship program, which have not been adequate enough to open the eyes of Nigerian youth to how government works. Which is why every time you see the youth protests, however rightly, they probably don't know what to demand. And every time they make demands, most of the things they are demanding, they are neither here or there. So government simply address them and then the problem continues. And they begin to feel that apathy, that they lose trust in government, they lose interest in a way forward, and they feel there's no solution to their problem and they look for other things. But there have been recent developments though, where we have the not too young to run bill implementation. But the not too young to run bill implementation, where they reduce certain ages or they reserve certain position for certain ages, and you find out that still an average youth cannot be able to access those because it will be reserved for people who are next to those in the corridors of power. There has also been positively that the growing youth representation in state assemblies. You go to most state assemblies now, there are youthful people that you find there. But the question now is, is it enough does youthfulness qualify you for leadership? Because you can be a youth, you may not be ill prepared to lead.
All right.
There are many youths in governance today who are not representational of their youthful counterparts, of the aspiration of the youth of the country.
Yeah, but before we even go on to that, how about what role does ethnicity and tribe play in would you count that as a barrier to youth participation in politics and governance in a country?
Those are instruments that causes division within the people. These are instruments that tends to create a barrier, for unity to happen. These are the instruments that makes it impossible for the youth to activate their numbers, to bring about the kind of change that they hope to see. Because rather than seeing themselves as young people whose future are at stake, they see themselves first as from their ethnic prism. They see themselves from the tribal prism. They see themselves also from probably their social stratification in terms of, we are rich, they are poor, or I have a job, I don't, or I live on the island, you live on the mainland. So there are so many things that politicians throw in the mix. And the most dangerous barrier is this identity politics of hate. Identity politics of hate has been designed in such a way that it makes people believe that if you like oranges and I like pineapple, you're automatically my enemy because you don't like the fruit that I like. You are discriminating against my preference in fruits. So with that, there's nothing you can ever do as Kimberly that will make sense to me because you don't like oranges like I do.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is one of the things that is causing division within the system. Today, an average youth believes that when you disagree with them, you actually hate them. When you disagree with them, you are sworn enemies. And we need to begin to re-educate and reorientate that, look, disagreement is an opportunity for us to be able to find means of working through our differences. There must be different ideas. There must be different perspective. And the more we see from each other's perspective, the better we unite, the better we come together to be able to see the joy and the blessings of our diversity. We are not all the same. We cannot all be the same. Our fingers are not the same. We must not even look at equality in the terms of outcomes, but
Okay.
we can look at equality in the terms of the effort we put in to building our nation.
Okay, I asked you that about ethnicity and tribe because the reality is, even looking at it at the state level, even you find that some multinational companies where you have your host community, how do I put it now? Let's say you're in a state or in a town, and the host town would rather recruit everyone from that particular town or community, and even any other
Mm,
person within the state, even if you're from the same state but you're not in the community, there is automatically the discrimination. So it's not a thing
yeah,
about competence now. It's now a thing about, oh, you're not from this community, you're not from this tribe, you cannot run. You're not from, this particular. Even if you're from that tribe, you're not from a particular local government, or you're not from a particular
exactly.
area. So, some would say that that also really limits and kills the morale of youths. But now you pioneered. I don't mean to go back on that. You talked about protest, yeah, and I want to ask you your takeaway as regards.
Yeah.
We've seen protests happen. You pioneered the NSAS protest. I know that you were one of the main. You talked about institutional reforms repeatedly and how SARS should be scrapped. And then we saw how that, some would say it got out of hand. So, what does that tell you about the preparedness of youths for leadership and governance in the country?
You know that a lot is lost in translation in our in our society, and majorly to phrase it in the from the prism or from the perspective of Bertrand Russell, I will say that they say a stupid man's report of what a clever man says is never accurate because he is unconsciously translates what he hears into something that he can understand. The media generally have been one of the problems that we have in the nation. The media is meant to be the fourth realm of the estate, meaning, or first estate of the realm, whichever way you want to put it, meaning aside from your legislature, executive, and uh, uh,
Judiciary.
and the judiciary, we have the press, who is supposed to help us find the truth, investigate matters, and let us know how things are. But right now, because they deliberately impoverished the press, they deliberately maltreated the press is now subservient to the political class. So that way, our news are hardly correct. Our news are hardly accurate. NSAS, Reform Police NG advocacy, has nothing to do with protest. You are dealing with institutional reforms of the most dangerous, institution in the country. If you look at every civilization, law and order and taxation are paramount. And you can't talk about law and order without this criminal justice system, which the police is a member of. And when we saw the kill and go 1983 recurrence, resurgence, and reinforcement of crime and impunity, we felt if we continue to do this, the same way our fathers have died, our grandfathers have died under this perilous culture of impunity, we may have our children inherit this same culture. So in 2017, myself and a couple of people started, in fact, 2016, we started a research, which would delve into localizing or tracing the pathology of the impunity of the Nigerian police. And we traced it onto the law which gives them the power. The colonial law of the Police Act 1943, which gives the locals, or the police officers in the locality, to enforce their authority over their fellow men. And they do it with impunity. And we realized that they were set up to protect the 1%, the political class, from the rest of the people. So they can do anything and get away with it. And that has been the situation. When they handed over to our politicians, they didn't change that law. They kept it that way. And that's why you see majority of our police officers serving as houseboys to VIPs, while we don't have enough to police 200 or something million people. So when we saw all those things, we started looking at how we are going to solve the problem. So we felt the first thing is to run an intervention where we can create a sense of succor to Nigerians, a place where they can report police
Brutality.
misdemeanors
Yeah.
to for immediate intervention while we engage our authorities on finding a lasting solution, beginning with the repeal and replacement of the Nigerian Police Act. That was what I gave my life to, I gave my resources to, I gave my time and energy to, without raising funds publicly, without calling anybody's abusing the mother of the president, without demonizing anybody. Because in Nigeria, you must understand, activist, I am not an activist, I'm an advocate. That's why I will fight. I'll tear my shirt if you call me an activist. Because
Please
everything in Nigeria,
Hello, good
everything
morning.
in
Please hold that
everything in
thought.
Nigeria.
Dr. Shagun, we have a call. Hello, good morning.
Okay.
Hello, good morning. All right. I don't know what's going on with the network. 0805-092-0927. So please, let's not hear shirts right now. But go on. You were saying something.
So when you hear a term in Nigeria, it's mostly abused. So you have to give clarification. So I wasn't coming out as an activist. In fact, as of 2015, when President Muhammadu Buhari came in and everybody was afraid of body language, I wasn't afraid of body language. I was ready to hold my government to account. I don't have a political party. I don't have any favorite. My own is once the masses, the majority vote somebody, he becomes a president that we must focus on nation building. So what happened then was that the president came in, people who got him in said, oh, we got you into power, we must have our way. They picked Nigerian immigration, removed 2,000 people by fiat, and then from service, and they started replacing them with their children. And I said, this will not happen in a democracy. And I rose, and I started talking about it, engaging people. I went to the Minister of Interior then, Lieutenant General Dambazao, and I said, this is what has happened, the crime that has happened under you, is perpetuated by the president. I know the president is under immunity, but this will not stand. But I am not a protester. I'll continue to tell the world the implication of this action so that when the repercussion and consequences start coming in, the president will know that it was the cause. But from there, the man said, well, since you have come and you have shown us the security impact assessment of what has happened, we will present your petition to Mr. President. And they presented it to President Muhammadu Buhari then. And he looked at it and said, well, this has merit. What does the guy want? What is his prayer? Is he a politician? They said, no. What was his prayer? He said, they want us to call them back. You see, in the history of Nigeria, a president cannot take an action for you to say he should reverse that action. You can't even ask. But at that period in 2015, the president signed those people back in. And they now gave me the file and said, okay, Mr. Sega, the president has done this, but you have to go and present this to the CGIS, that's the Controller General of the Immigration Service. And I did. Of course, it was cantankerous, there was problems, but eventually we came to an agreement that yes, these people deserve to be called back. You may not be the one that recruited them, but they must I don't know any of them. But when I was doing that, you must understand, there are people whose language, whose approach to anything governance is protest.
Okay,
those ones are already.
Now, if I can come in there, first of all, the media reported what was happening. Now you're giving the background story. Well, I recall vividly that NSAS protest in court started with I think there was a particular police misconduct case in Ughelli, Delta State, where I think stray bullets or something.
That is not the beginning. That's why we need to continue to have this conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm saying that
NSAS protests.
Yeah,
there is a difference between the advocacy and the protest. NSAS itself was not designed as a protest. That's why it will always end negatively, terribly for anybody who wants to commercialize NSAS advocacy.
Okay.
Because that advocacy was the only advocacy in the history of Nigeria that gave common ground meaning in this country.
Okay.
You brought people together despite their division. So what I'm trying to say, let me just cut the long story short.
Okay.
We have recorded success in that regard before, in 2015, by engaging government responsibly without using protest and demonization of persons, without without exploiting the pains of other people to project our own notoriety. So after doing that, people still didn't understand the example. So when we went on in 2017 to engage the police brutality matter by setting up an objective of ending the culture of impunity, which was exemplified by SARS, and also holistically reforming the Nigerian police system. So that was what the campaign was about. And we succeeded as at September 2020 2019, by establishing the Police Trust Fund 2019. And in September 2020, we had the Nigerian Police Act 2020, which automatically abolishes all the lack of transparencies you have in the police. It also recognizes human rights as a fundamental consideration in the engagement of police. And lastly, it happened before in Nigeria. So that was the end of that particular advocacy. And we're monitoring the things that we've been complaining about.
So
but unfortunately,
for the sake of time, I apologize. I know we have a lot to talk about as regards that, but now I'm tying this into, it got out of hand. Okay, but now
interpretation of engagement of government, that all these peaceful talks, they don't like it. What they have learned from their leaders is to face government by protesting and by chanting war songs at them. And we kept on saying, this will only endanger you. Those who design these things use it for their own self at your expense, but they wanted to experience it. So which also comes to what we're saying. They are not ready for leadership because they don't understand how to read between the lines.
Okay, well, when you say I'm a youth and I'm ready for leadership, but then I'm asking you, that's why I'm asking, like, okay, fine. So now we've identified the challenges. We've identified, the root causes and all that we have to identify. But let's begin to talk about empowerment and solutions and ideas. How do you think the youths can be empowered to take on leadership roles in wake of all the challenges that we have mentioned?
Yeah, the perception of hardship must not be seen as punishment. You and I'm sure that when we're growing up, you know how many streets you have to go to fetch water, to wash plates and clothes. Today, if you do that to any child, any young person, they will sue you in the human rights court that you are abusing their rights. So if you look at it properly, we must identify avenues for discovering meaning. You see, some of these things government cannot, they are not external. Government, it's not the duty of government to give you happiness. Or your happiness cannot come from outside. It must come from within.
That's debatable.
It must be curated from within.
Okay, well.
So let's start from there. So secondly, we must encourage our youth to work or embrace creative pursuits. They must dedicate themselves to a cause or create something that is significant. They created NSAS. It was significant. They gave us a new law. It has never happened before where a normal citizen whose father is a nobody, whose mother is a nobody, stood for something and achieved that purpose in his lifetime without going to jail. You understand? And he did not ask for political office after doing it. He never wanted to be worshipped. He wasn't rearing people. He did not create a cult around himself.
Okay.
So secondly, love and relationship, connection with others brings profound purpose. When you know that, look, I am doing this not because I want to be a star boy on Instagram, or I want to be the most followed person on earth. I'm doing it because I want to start small. I want my society, my community to be better just because I am here. Thirdly, attitude towards suffering. We must show dignity in adversity. So when we are no longer able to change the situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. So there are certain things that are beyond your control, that are beyond what you can do anything about. The next thing is for you to change your perspective of how you see those things. This is how you begin to understand what leadership is.
But in
instead
the
of
wake
you working on your emotions.
In the wake of the hunger and economic hardship in the land, do you think this is applicable when it comes to empowering the youths? Because right now they will say a hungry man is an angry man. And so now that's the first question. And then secondly, whose responsibility is it to oversee these solutions you're preferring? Is it the CSOs? Is it parents? Is it guardians? Is it,
Security officer is the man in the mirror. If you fix the individual, you have fixed society. Because what man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal. You see, there's a chemical in our brain called dopamine. What dopamine does, it pumps energy into you and creates that goal-getting activity around you. It gives you that energy to strive. You're going to work hard, you're going to do 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, just to be able to say, yes, I've gotten what I want. But unfortunately, after getting that, you lose sense of purpose. That thing becomes useless to you. You've achieved it. You've gotten it thrill you like it did when you are aiming for it, which means it gives you an opportunity to want more, to want to do more, to want to look at something else. So our youth must be able to rechannel and repurpose their aspiration.
Okay.
Not from the victim mentality of, government did it, government did that. Look, so Nigeria or African countries generally.
Yeah. We have about how do I take all these teachings if I am hungry? If I haven't eaten since yesterday morning? and I don't know where the next meal is going to come from. What approach would you suggest?
What I will suggest is for us to understand that people become poor for lack of productivity. Ask yourself, what value do I bring? What do I have? Practice gratitude. I am alive today. That's even one plus. Whether I have food to eat or I don't have food to eat. No politician, no government can solve the problem of hunger. Whether you are
Well,
rich, whether you're poor,
Dr.
we will still
Shego,
be hungry.
that
Yeah,
one I don't
we will still
agree
be
with
hungry.
you. That one
Remember,
I don't agree with you on that. I know I don't
no.
have
Let
to
me
agree with
explain.
you.
Let me explain to
But
you.
okay,
You
go
see,
on.
whether you are rich or poor, you will be hungry. If you stop being hungry, there's a problem with your system. Hunger is not the problem. Hunger is a sign, it's a signal that tells you that you have not eaten today, so that you don't have ulcer, so that your stomach doesn't digest itself. Hunger is not the problem. You continue to be hungry. If somebody presses your doorbell today and it rings and you don't like the sound of the bell, the problem is not the sound of the bell. The sound of the bell is telling you there's somebody at the door. So
I
if you don't want the bell to ring,
yeah.
shut your gate and don't let everybody have access to your doorstep.
Okay,
So
but
you cannot stop being hungry. You cannot stop being thirsty. And if you continue to live by what you will eat, then you will always be chained to the whims and caprices of politicians.
yeah, but
Because you,
looking at it from another perspective would be that if the governments and representatives at the federal or state level are collecting allocations and allowances on my behalf, then I shouldn't be
mm,
hungry. That's a violation of my human right. Or if I'm paying taxes, if I just exist as a Nigerian, there are basic necessities that I should have access to. So that's it's not I would have the representative at NAS because some of the issues in my community, in my constituency, I expect that my rep would push it forward and then bring these issues to light. So as much as yes, I am responsible for not feeling hungry or taking responsibility of my suffering, I believe that their representative, the government should represent me and and should not violate the human rights. So that's my right. It's not necessarily saying that I'm suffering and I'm
if you
hungry, I should get
if
myself
you
out
put
of it.
that in proper perspective, you voted for a reason. You voted for a government that campaigned for to heal your economy, to fix security insecurity in your country, to create human capital development. In other words, create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive, so you can have employment and you can be able to meet your basic needs. But remember, that in all this, even in countries where there's 24 hours power, there are so many jobs for them to do that they can't. They are even telling themselves that some jobs that are beneath me, let foreigners come and do it. And all people still take their own lives for lack of fulfillment, which is why I keep hammering on the fact that it is not just about the hunger thing. We are not primitives. We are humans, and some of the people who have bought into the campaign and the idea of hunger, don't really understand the dynamics behind the creation of that ideal. It is not meant, you see, hunger is an existential problem for everybody. We will be hungry, whether you are rich or you're poor. But what I'm saying is, find your government, your authorities, are the people that you are put in power. Are you monitoring or engaging them enough to, or holding them account enough for them to do the needful as far as creating an enabling environment is concerned? That is the question you need to ask the individual in their collective. And what are we doing as the youth of Nigeria to be able
Okay.
to do to ensure that the next person that gets into the position of authority, they are answerable to us and we can recall them? The laws are there, the processes are there, but are people
Okay.
really interested?
Yeah,
How
well,
many of our youth read these days?
yeah,
If
well,
you write more than one paragraph, you're already looking for trouble. Their brain will overheat.
please don't burn the brain. All right, so let's close this up now. I have to run, you have to go as well. So now, what is the way forward? After all said and done, how can we all get involved and get the country, working and wake up, not the sleeping giant, but woken awake giant?
Yeah.
Yeah, so how can we
Um,
move forward?
yeah, we have identified different challenges, and we know that there are positive, aspects already in what from the development we're seeing now. Even though it's not enough, we have 47, 40 something ministers, and we can count five who are functional, who has a pulse. And then from there, we can see that we need urgently now for effective youth preparation for leadership in Nigeria. We need systemic reforms to ensure that political participation is genuinely accessible to young people. I'm ready to mentor as many as possible, even though I'm not seeking political office, but I want to see young people in power. I've done that across institutions, whether you're looking at the law profession, you're looking at real estate profession, you're looking at all the IT. I've started this 20 years ago, and I
Yeah.
have a lot of people who are mentored by me, employed by me, who are doing great globally based
Yeah.
on the preparation that we've given them. So it's not
Right.
something, everything I'm saying, the
Yeah.
reason why I went into all those long talks is to show you what had been done. So I'm not just theorizing.
No, I agree.
I've
Yeah.
done the things
Yeah.
that I'm saying.
Yeah.
Secondly, strengthening educational frameworks to include more leadership and governance education. They must learn this from school.
All right.
I went to a school. I was invited to speak at a school during the Martin Luther King. I was a
So
Martin Luther King speaker in a
I'm
school,
kicked
and
out
I
of the
realized that in
studio
that
right now.
school
Yes. I'm being
you
kicked
cannot
out of the
graduate.
studio.